How to play the Mixolydian scale, 3 notes per string, starting on the 10th fret of the low E string. And if that's all you wanted, then you can click off the video right now. But if you're someone who doesn't want to miss out on some cool tricks that you can do with the Mixolydian scale, as well as how to play with it in context, then let's go a little bit deeper. But first things first, let's break down how to play this mode across the fretboard. So starting on the 10th fret of the low E string, we're gonna have 10, 12, 14. Then on the A string, the exact same thing, 10, 12, 14. Same thing for the D string. Now onto the G string, we're gonna have 11, 12, 14. Up onto the B string, we're gonna have 12, 13, 15. And then finally on the high E string, we're gonna have 12, 14, 15. And that is the Mixolydian mode. Now the Mixolydian scale is built off the 5th scale degree of the major scale, which means if we took our original example on the 10th fret and went down 5 scale degrees, this would tell us which key we are playing in. So if this is our 5th, this would be our 4th, this would be our 3rd, this would be our 2nd, and this would be our root. So if we played D Mixolydian on the 10th fret, we'd also be playing in G major, which is on the 3rd fret. Another trick that we can do, which is even faster, is to play the 4th above our root. So if this is our root on D, right above it is a 4th, which is also going to be a G. And that's gonna be our key. And if we wanted to find the minor key that we're playing in, all we have to do is go up 1 scale degree. So in this case, if we're playing on the 10th fret right here, and this is gonna be a D, 1 scale degree up would be right here, which is going to be an E. So if we're playing D Mixolydian, we're also playing in E minor. So now that we know how to play the Mixolydian mode, why would we even want to? What makes it so special? Well, the main characteristic of the Mixolydian is that it has a flat 7, and this gives it kind of a goofy, video game, playful type of a feel. And I specifically say video games because this particular sound used to be dominant in the 90s and early 2000s. I recently got a question about the modes, and I'm planning on putting out an entire masterclass on how to use each of the modes modally. And if you've never heard that term before, there is a difference between playing the modes modally and also using the modes as a framework to continue a scale. And if you're someone who's been following along with the series for a little while now, you might have also had this question, and that is, if I'm playing a mode shape relative to a major or minor key, aren't I just continuing to extend that particular key and I'm not actually playing modally? And if you're someone who's asked this question, then this shows that you are very smart and you've caught on to something. Because if I play A major, and then I play B Dorian, and then I play C sharp Phrygian, isn't that all A major? And yes, if you figured this out, then you are very smart. However, there is a caveat to this. As we've been progressing through the modes, you might have noticed that we've been building out a grid that covers the entire neck. And up until this point, we've learned the Ionian mode, which is the major scale. Then we've also learned the Dorian mode, the Phrygian mode, the Lydian mode, and now the Mixolydian mode. And if you've really been doing your homework and practicing, if I asked you to play a solo in A major, now with everything that we've learned so far, you have the ability to play a solo 2 octaves on the 5th fret all the way up to the 15th fret. So now you've mastered all of this from what we've learned so far. Now I need you to listen very carefully because this is where the magic happens. If I asked you to play in D Mixolydian, every other position relative to D Mixolydian is also the Mixolydian scale. And that is mind-blowing. So if you play D Mixolydian, or you played C Lydian, those are both the Mixolydian scale. And so if you're watching this and you feel like this is absolutely super confusing and mind-blowing, it's because it is. Because what I just said can be very difficult to wrap your brain around if you don't understand that there's one piece still missing to make something Mixolydian, Lydian, major, or minor. And for the more experienced players out there, you already know what I'm going to say. And that one piece of the puzzle that is missing is the chord progression. The context that gives our chords an identity. What do we hear as the root chord or the home chord? Because in popular music, you only really hear two modes, those being the Ionian mode and the Aeolian mode, also known as the major and minor scale. And so we've become very conditioned to recognize major and minor keys, whereas the rest of the modes don't really get used, at least not in popular music. But if you were to go and look up a song that's in a Locrian key, that 100% does exist. But you're never going to hear that in modern music. And just as proof of concept, a song that resolved, very important word here, resolved to this is very unsettling. That would be a D diminished or Locrian key if you had that as your one chord. And we really want to hear this go here. It naturally feels much more pleasant to the ear. And that's why you don't hear a lot of modal music on the radio or just in general. And yes, that was a very long explanation, I understand, but I also want to clean that up because I had a lot of questions coming through about, isn't this still major or isn't this still minor? And in the context of how we are learning the framework, which is super important before we get too crazy with the artistic side of the modes themselves, yes, we are still staying in major and minor keys to keep it simple. This is something that I wish my college professor did for me when I was in school because this is one of the most confusing things I ever had to learn. And I really had to sit down myself and make it make sense. Because if I was to sit here and tell you that every mode is all the modes and all the keys is every key and all the chords are all the chords, that doesn't make any sense. I'm sorry, but it just doesn't. And I know I say at the beginning of every single video that I don't want to waste your time, but this is one of those things that had to be said because there were so many questions coming in. But I did add timestamps to the video, so if you're someone who wanted to skip that entire monologue, welcome back. And as a matter of fact, let's get into an example of what a Mixolydian mode actually sounds like. Now, what makes that example really special is that we actually were playing in a Mixolydian key. We were resolving on the root of D Mixolydian and also hanging out on the flat 7 as well. And just for contrast, so you can really feel the difference, here's an example of what it sounds like to play over E minor using the Mixolydian mode on the 10th fret. So in that example, you could really feel those minor tones, and we were really just using the Mixolydian mode as an extension of the Aeolian mode. And although we played the mode in the exact same position, what changed was the chord progression. It gave us a completely different flavor. And speaking of which, if you want to extend your fretboard mastery even further, check out this video right here and it'll do exactly that.